Redditors who grew up with strict parents. What was the most absurd rule you had to live by? I was not allowed to use the money cheat on Sims growing up because that's not how the real world works. I used the cheat once and couldn't explain where all the money I had came from, so I was grounded and had Sims taken away. I once got grounded for 2 months because my school bus was late. Nobody in my house was allowed to get the mail except my dad. Doesn't matter what time he got home. Leave the mail in the mailbox. He would also personally open all the mail no matter the recipient. He would always know if anyone touched it. Buttloads of hidden debt. My grandmother made me write out the encyclopedia entry on witchcraft when she found out I had read the first 4 Harry Potter books, if that counts. Your grandmother is a nerd. Noon in the house was allowed to shave or have a razor at all. I could go to a barber or shave at a friend's house, but had my PC taken away when I tried at home. I still don't understand my mother's logic behind this one. I wasn't allowed to shave my legs. I guess my mom's thinking was that all the hair would serve as boy repellent. It wasn't necessary, though. My personality was more than enough to keep you from getting laid. Had to get home before the sun set. Even though I went to school an hour and a half away and would get home at the same time each day, but always found myself in trouble during winter. At least you didn't live in Alaska. My parents were all over the place with strictness. When I was old enough to drive, my younger sister and I would drive to McDonald's, just a few miles away. My parents would admonish us, whatever you do not eat French fries in the car. Invariably, we would get home, they would run out, open the car doors, sniff, and start screaming at us for eating French fries in the car. We never did. After I turned 9, I wasn't allowed to watch cartoons anymore. I hated my dad for it. My dad wouldn't let me go out, at all. The only time he would let me leave the house was to walk to school, and even then, he had to walk me to the entrance. Was teased for it all the time. Due to my isolated upbringing, I'm very socially awkward, and he wonders why I won't go out and find myself a partner. He never raised my sisters that way, just me. He also wouldn't let me chew gum. He would flip out. He has physically pried my mouth open to take the gum out. He is such a bizarre, controlling man. Something less serious. My mom was paranoid everyone and everything was a kidnapper. She hated the mailman on our route. So, when I was young, 3, 4 years old, my mom told me it was illegal to be outside when the mail came. Around 11:15 every day I'd see that truck coming. I'd hightail it inside the house, terrified I would be spotted. Fast forward 30 years. I still genuinely feel a tinge of panic in the smallest recesses of the back of my brain when I see the mailman arrive. Only now it's overpowered by the excitement of my latest Amazon package I really don't need. My dad was raised with the idea that kids essentially have no opinion, which he passed on to my sister and I. If we were doing anything and he or my mom needed us to do something else, we were expected to immediately drop it and go do the other thing. Which doesn't sound that bad until I'd be in the middle of painting or something else messy, be called to do dishes, then in the middle of dishes be called to clean up the original mess, then go to clean that up and be yelled at for not finishing dishes. And Lord help me if I said just a minute or anything of that. I wasn't allowed to leave my room. I could go to the bathroom or kitchen, but I better have a reason to be there. My mom and I didn't get along, and she did this count to 3 thing. I used to get in trouble for stuff I didn't do, so I got sent to my room a lot. I would then refuse to go there, so she came up with this rule where she would add an extra hour every time I talked back after she got to 3. I ended up spending 8 hours in my room once because my sister lied about me doing something. I would just pull a filibuster until she changed her rule. If you didn't instantly say what you wanted to eat, my father would cook onions and garlic. He didn't like people wasting his time. I couldn't shave my legs until I was 16. I did when I was 12. Mom found out and grounded me. I had to ask to get a drink of anything or eat anything. Couldn't go anywhere unless my little brother could go with 2 or if he had a play date. If he didn't have anyone to play with, then I couldn't either. We are 8 years apart. I had dark hair. Everyone was shaving in 8th grade and mocking me. I still wasn't allowed to shave, and my light-haired mom didn't understand why it was such a big deal. We used my dad's razor until he lost his crap and made her buy us razors. This thread just reaffirms my belief that some people shouldn't be parents. My parents were super laid back, but my mother's stepdad Larry could be a huge butthole. She told me that one morning, as a kid, she was given a chocolate covered donut and, as a kid will do, decided to start nibbling off the chocolate. Larry decided this pee him the frick off, and asked her promptly to stop eating the donut like that. Oh, just let her eat the donut how she wants, said mom's mom washing dishes. Kid continues to eat chocolate around the edges. Larry then shoots up shouting knock that off and fricking pitches his morning cup of coffee across the kitchen where it explodes on the wall next to mom's mom. I'm thankful that Larry was not in my mother's life for long. My parents weren't really strict, didn't have to be, but one of the dumbest rules I ever had to endure was I had to wear socks at all times, because my stepdad hated me walking around with bare feet. It was only me, too. My mom could be barefoot, my younger half brother could be barefoot, but I couldn't. To this day I freaking hate wearing socks unless I have shoes on. I had a stepdad who was a police officer, and all this occurred until I was 15. I had to eat beans first on my plate and then clockwise. If I didn't follow this rule, I would get no food and smacked from dinner table. I had to stand in the corner with both feet on floor and back straight for hours. I had a time limit on hugging my mother. If we hugged too long he called me homosexual slurs. I had to get up in the morning and sit on the toilet and shine his leather while he showered. I couldn't shut the door to poop. I couldn't shut the door to shower or bathe. If my bed squeaked at night, I would get whipped for what he thought was self-pleasuring. Oh, yeah, there is more. I just don't want to dig into those tunnels before bed. That's not strict, that's abusive. I couldn't brush my teeth after breakfast on school mornings. I had braces, and my mom wouldn't let me brush my teeth after breakfast in fear of us being late for school. I offered to make my own breakfast earlier in the morning in order to compensate, so I could get all the gunk out of my braces after eating. However, when I made my breakfast the next morning she revoked my ride to school privilege. Had to ride my bike to school every day from then on. Luckily my school wasn't a long ride, but rainy days sucked. It was my punishment for being disobedient. My time to shine. No nail polish. No tights under dresses. No drinking tea. Not allowed to watch anything with any cursing. Had to call my parents sir and mom. Now they're upset that I call them this instead of mom and dad, but it's what they asked me to do. At bedtime of 9:30 until I was 18. Parents took my phone at 9 p.m. every night when I was in high school and read through all of my texts. Opening my bank statements. Not a rule, but my parents would read my diary and go through my computer, and once left video cameras up while I was hanging out with a friend and talking. They loved to repeat things I had said or written to me, just to let me know that I had no privacy. In elementary school, my parents sat me down and said, we just want you to know, if you get pregnant while living with us we will kick you out. My parents gave my dog away while I was at school one day without telling me. I was 9. And these days they wonder why I never want to share anything with them. My mom once kicked me out of the house for being gay, and I'm not even gay. My mom wanted me to be gay. Once a friend and I got wet in the rain on the way to my home and she asked if we were going to use the shower. Both. At the same time, she brought towels for both of us. She was extremely disappointed when I told her I got a girlfriend. Not me, but one of my friends. For context, my friends and I are 23/24. Went over to my friend's house in Long Island a week ago. I don't have my own car yet, so my brother-in-law and sister dropped me off. I moved to a different part of Long Island about a year ago, so I don't have a ride back home like I usually did back when I lived in Queens. Asked my friend, whose house I was at, if he could drop me home. Initially he said yes, but as we were all ready to leave to go home, my friend informs me that his parents have a tracker on him and he can't drop me home. I had no problem taking the train back home, but we were so perplexed when he said it, as if it was normal. I knew his parents were strict and really wouldn't let him go anywhere when we were kids, but holy crap, the fact that he's still subjected to this, to the point where they placed a freaking tracker on him, made me incredibly sad on my way home. I would say call child services, but I think it's a little late. I wasn't allowed to swim in public swimming pools because I would catch AIDS. When my PE class would go to the pool 1 week a year, I had to walk laps around the pool because I couldn't participate. My parents were horrible parents in general, but the most bizarre rule that my siblings and I put up with was that we weren't allowed to sneeze multiple times in a row. One sneeze, Fine. Another sneeze after some arbitrary number of minutes later, no problem. 2 sneezes in a row, get yelled at for being unhygienic, even if you covered your nose mouth properly, and for having no manners. God forbid if you sneezed thrice or more in a row. I have seasonal allergies, and one time, my dad was in a particularly bad mood and caught me in a sneezing fit and grounded me for a week. I find it almost impossible to sneeze just once. After I open those floodgates, there's usually another 1 or 2 in the chamber ready to pop. Could never have my door shut because as a kid I don't pay any bills, so I'm not running anything around here. My stepdad typed up and printed a 5-page list of rules. He made me print, sign and date the last page. I was to be held accountable, and if any rules were broken I had to move out. I wasn't a bad kid. The whole thing was to establish his dominance on me. If I farted, it was 2 hours outside, even in the freezing winter. One day I collapsed in the cold and was taken away from my mum after I was hospitalized 3 hours after collapsing. Then lived with my grandparents for the rest of my childhood and legally not allowed to see my mum until I was 18. Guess it counted as child abuse. This takes the cake for silliest rule disguised as something very abusive. I'm sorry. Hopefully your grandparents were nice. That I was not allowed to have friends and hang out with classmates because they were worldly, or whatever it's called in English. I wish I could have had a more normal childhood without feeling like a traitor all the time for wanting to have friends. We had to drink a glass of lemon juice right before bed. Pure, freshly squeezed lemon juice. A whole glass. Timer went on for 10 minutes. If it went off and you weren't finished, spanking. Set timer and repeat until the lemon juice is gone. I did okay. Maybe 1 spanking. But my sister has a terrible gag reflex, so she really got it bad. As you can imagine, being 5 and going to bed like that makes for some nasty heartburn nausea. My mother would come home from work occasionally and say, I know you did something you weren't supposed to. Go to your room. You have 15 minutes to think about what you want to say. If you lie, you'll get double punishment. I would freak out and say anything I thought might be bad I did during the day. I watched TV and I wasn't supposed to. I forget my textbook at school. I made fun of a girl at school. I climbed a tree, etc. She would ground me for a week and I would feel relieved it wasn't worse. Fricked up thing is that she had no idea what bad thing I did. She just knew I would confess to anything and everything. Being raised religious, I always thought I was sinning. So this is a way for her to control me and ground me so she was comfortable with where I was when she had night shifts. My dad wrote contracts for me, including clauses like daily wake up bedtimes, times to eat and what I ate, sure, homework, studying and sports schedules, and strict rules and regulations regarding how I spent my free time, such as 30 minutes of computer use or video games, 1 hour of television, 1 sleepover per month, etc. If I didn't follow my schedule to the dot, missed sports practice or a game, failed to do a chore, or failed to get a 4.0 on every report card, I would be super grounded, as my friends referred to it. Basically I had to read quietly in my room. I wasn't even allowed outside. I had to sign these contracts and commit to them or I would be sent to military school, which is where I spent every summer after 7th grade, taking classes. Anyways, as a result of those classes, I was a couple of grades ahead with math, English and science, and was still expected to make perfect marks every semester. I was grounded virtually all the time, but luckily my parents had joint custody, and I escaped to my mother's house as much as possible. I fought for sole custody to belong to my mother when he finally decided that, having caught me in the act with my girlfriend at the time, he was going to send me to a military academy 4 hours away. No, haven't spoken to him in almost 6 years. My mom used to not allow me to watch any movies that had magic in them. Jumanji was considered demonic. I didn't even see The Little Mermaid until I was 16. I didn't watch The Princess and the Frog until I had moved out. I was also banned from watching Harry Potter. I managed to sneak that in at the age of 20. Mom never caught me. Dad didn't give a care. Could not watch Disney movies as a child because they showed kissing before marriage. Wasn't allowed to go to friends' houses or let them give me a ride home from school because I'd be imposing on their parents. Mother went through my trash to make sure I didn't throw out anything important. When Nintendo, the original, first came out. My cousin got one for Christmas. We were poor, so he brought it over so we could try it out. No. The new rule became, no video games hooked up to the TV because it would ruin the TV. For your information, they still believe this to be true and still only have one TV. You have been visited by Money Cat. For economic luck in the near future, subscribe to Updoot Reddit. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Or don't. Either way, have a great day, you magnificent people.